attack that's happened on New York. And so I talked a little bit earlier about the sort of the different themes we go for in our playfields and the different feelings from pop culture. This would be Cloverfield if you've seen that movie. So definitely it's all about building this atmosphere. We've constructed the raid in a way that it's a very sort of building feeling of apprehension up until the point where you actually end up in the raid, and then you start going, okay. So we really wanted to bring the scope and scale of world events to this. So when you start playing the raid, you'll actually see that it's affecting the world globally. The secret world has now sort of torn through into the real world, and you're the only people who can cover it up.
So the size of the raid is 10. The reason we ended up on 10 was like we played around with different numbers. We already feel that a 5-man group, which is our group size, already has a challenge when it comes to the nightmare dungeons, and they sort of have their challenge there. And we have to keep in mind that a lot of the skill from the player skill comes in the form of creating group builds. Like the whole group is running builds that complement each other, that has some sort of synergy. And if we started adding like 20, 30, 40 people and need to keep that in mind, it's going to be a challenge. So we feel 10 is the right number for us.
10 is good.
At least for now.
Yep. Alright, so we're going to pump the volume. Do you have the volume?
Oh yeah.
We're going to... You'll see, we have a lot of voiceover. Like TSW is fully voiced over, and we put a lot of focus on storytelling in the game, and I think it's fairly safe to say that it's probably got one of the best stories in an MMO ever. And that's been very well reported on by the players as well. So as the player moves through, we try to really create this feeling of crisis in New York. There's something going on. These guys are gathered around an iPad listening to a news broadcast. You have people trying to get out of the subway. These guys are locked in. We're not going to reveal how the player gets to this area at the start, because we're not going to reveal when and where when this takes place in time as well. Is a question for people to ask themselves later. But we're going to move forward and head into the depths of this a little bit. So the police are clueless, which is no surprise to anybody. And I just want to sort of mention that as we sort of build these levels, we're really thinking about the emotional impact, like where players are feeling. We really want to sort of bring them down, bring them up, put them through a bit of a loop. So here we really we have like this, we have a character who's been terribly affected by this occasion, this event. I mean, his wife is missing and his child is not perhaps in the best of health. And if you listen to the words that he's singing to the baby, it's actually quite heartbreaking. And the whole sort of setup here is that we want players to actually feel an emotional connection to this. We don't want them to just run through and kill mobs. We want them to actually feel like, okay, there's something going on here. This is these real people are being really affected by this. And then you have German tourists.
Ich wusste es. Ich hätte auf meine Mutter hören sollen.
Was willst du damit sagen?
Sie hat gesagt, dass ein Besuch in New York gefährlich ist und dass wir lieber nach Rom fahren sollten.
New York ist nicht gefährlich.
Ach, nicht? Echt jetzt, Jan? Wirklich?
Normalerweise ist New York nicht gefährlich.
Aha, also nur wenn es gerade in die Luft gejagt wird.
Das hier ist nicht das Ende der Welt, Schatz.
Ach, wirklich? Für mich sieht es nämlich ganz nach dem Ende der Welt aus, Jan.
Wir könnten uns stattdessen die Downtown ansehen. Im Reiseführer steht, dass man in Soho viel unternehmen kann.
Ich will nicht nach Soho. Ich will den Times Square sehen.
Och, Kuschelbärchen.
Das hier ist genau wie Düsseldorf.
Sonnenblümchen, ich bitte dich, red dich.
So we're going to move on. You remember earlier that I mentioned the Hiroshi group and that they're always involved in some way. They're always sort of showing up at these centers of occult activity. They're a multinational corporation. If you want, I don't know whether to say they're the Microsoft, the Apple, or the Samsung of or even the Sony of the secret world. But they're everywhere. They have their fingers in every pie, and they're always involved. And this is an event that is it is global and it's going to affect everything in the game. So it's a much larger scale raid than people are used to in these sort of games. The military is involved, the Navy is involved, the Air Force are there. It's going to be very hard to cover this up for the guys on the conspiracy team. So,
and as you guys probably noticed that we don't have any trash in our raid. Usually in other MMOs you have to fight through a lot of trash to get to the good parts, and we thought, no, let's not do that. I mean, instead of sort of forcing the players to spend 30 minutes or an hour up to like with fighting trash in a dungeon, then let's just try to immerse them in the setting. Try to make them feel something. Let's try to sort of build this suspense and then show them the really good part at the end. And we think that this kind of works well. I mean, the trash is only there to like bags of HP that you need to sort of grind through in order to get to the good parts. So instead, let's probably give them something cool to experience on their way there.
So we're getting closer to Times Square now. Obviously we're trying to get to high ground and get onto the roof. I mean, players can explore this area. There'll be lore. I don't know if you guys know about the lore system and so forth we have in the game, but we have the collectible lore pieces all over the game that fill in more and more of the story as well. And this will be full of those as well, hidden in different niches. So, as I mentioned, the Orochi have their presence everywhere. In this case, it's their media brand, it's QBL Media, who is, if you want, the Fox News of the Secret World. So these guys are like their marketing, their PR. These guys are all about making sure that the Orochi, in whatever situation they're involved in, they always come out with their noses clean. And this is a huge, huge company. And these guys have employees everywhere, and these employees are actually forced to stay here while these events are happening. So they've been forced to stay in the office. So we're coming out now to actually the view of Times Square from the QBL Media building. And the reporter here is reporting live, and he's the guy that they were watching in the iPad earlier. So it's his voice that you heard earlier, now you get to kind of see what he sees. Turn it up.
Maggie, we've been cut off. Are we still on? Jesus, have they cut us off?
That's our reveal. That's our first raid coming in about 2 months, October.
October, yeah.
Yep. And then so you've seen some sort of short-term content, the weapon that's coming out later this month. Long-term content being the raid, and of course the further off Tokyo. So all those three things, and we're going to keep working on the game going forward, month after month. There'll be new stuff coming on. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Cool.
If you guys have any questions,
just ask.
feel free to ask.
At this stage now, have you